Welcome to Vermont's Voice, your source for the public interest conversation in the State House and beyond. I'm your host, Jordan Heiden. Today, I'm sitting down with Representative Dara Torre to talk all about crossover climate action in Washington County. Before that, though, I'll be sitting down with Senior Strategist Tom Hughes to talk all about tariffs. This is Vermont's Voice. Well, hey, Tom, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me.
How you feeling about it? You excited?
Yeah, this is great.
Awesome. Well, I'm very glad that you're here because I have been eager to have this conversation with you about tariffs for a little bit now. That's because I feel like I am hearing about them all over the place, yet I continue to not have a firm grasp at all about what's going on, what the impacts are, any of that. So I'm hoping as VPIRG's senior strategist, you'll be able to give at least maybe a little bit of clarity as to what's going on.
I'll do my best.
Okay, great. And I think maybe because there is so much misinformation swirling around right now, it makes sense to start from the very beginning, just so we're all on the same page. It's very clear what's going on. So my first question for you, Tom, is what are tariffs and who pays for them?
So I think the first thing to know is that tariffs have been around for millennia. They are taxes on imported or exported goods. There have been times in American history where we have deployed tariffs as a protectionist measure or a revenue-raising mechanism. These are a little bit different than how we've done things in the past, or actually quite a bit different than we've done things in the past. But for the purposes of setting the table for this conversation, tariffs are taxes on goods as they cross an international border. There are two kinds of tariffs. There's import tariffs and export tariffs. What's in the news these days is our import tariffs.
Okay.
And with an import tariff, it is the company that is importing the goods that pays the price to the customs agents. And in the case of these tariffs, it is U.S. companies paying the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Service the tariffs on goods imported from Canada, Mexico, China, Europe, and the rest of the world. But for the purposes of today's conversation and for Vermonters, the most important and meaningful set of tariffs right now are the ones on Canadian goods.
Okay, that's helpful. I feel like I'm following. Could you maybe just give us an example or a hypothetical scenario?
Sure. There's been a number of stories in the news recently about Vermont's craft beer industry. As we know, they are sourcing ingredients from across the region and around the world. And one of the products that they source are empty aluminum cans. You and I went to visit a brewery last year, and there was a warehouse stacked to the ceiling with thousands and thousands and thousands of empty aluminum cans. Those cans typically come from Canada. And a pallet of cans might have 6,000 or so empty cans in it.
Wow.
Each of those cans costs the brewery maybe 16 cents to import. Now that can is going to cost 20 cents. It's a 25% tariff on Canadian aluminum products. So for a small brewery, that might be a couple of $1,000s a year. But for some of our larger breweries, that's going to run into $100,000 or more a year in terms of tariffs, extra taxes that they are paying to the Customs Patrol.
Okay, that doesn't sound great. But you mentioned in there the 25% increase. And so I guess the next question I have is that where we stand right now on the conversation of tariffs? Because I know that the news says something different every day, but like right now in this moment, where do we stand with that number?
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody, including the customs agents, who could totally describe what is in effect and what isn't in effect.
Okay.
However, let me try to give you my understanding of what's in effect as of today. Okay. There's sort of three different levels of Trump tariffs. There's the ones that are actually in effect. There's the ones that are promised to go into effect at a date certain, currently April 2nd. And then there's the ones that are simply threatened. And as of today, there's 10% tariff on Canadian energy products. And we can talk a little bit more about what those are.
Great.
There's a 25% tariff on most other imported goods from Canada and Mexico. There are broad exceptions for things included in the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement, like automobile parts, for example. But it's my understanding that most of the energy products that we import are not exempted from those tariffs. And about 60% of the goods that cross the border from Canada into the United States are being hit with that 25% tariff. On top of that, there is an additional tariff of 50% on imported steel and aluminum, regardless of where that comes from in the world. We get most of our steel and aluminum imports from Canada.
Okay, so just checking in, this feels pretty bad, right? This is not great for us. I know we'll talk about that later, but
Vermont imports about $2.8 billion worth of Canadian goods on an annual basis. There's those three different tiers of tariffs. But if you were to play that out, that's going to be in the neighborhood of $500 million or more that Vermonters are paying in tariffs this year.
Okay. Well, that definitely answers that question. You mentioned a little earlier that you could dig into some more specifics on what those products exactly look like. If you could do that, I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, I think the most important one to think about, because it is our largest import from Canada, is energy products.
Okay.
We import about $800 million worth of hydroelectricity from Quebec. We import about $400 million worth of liquid fuels, gasoline, heating fuels, kerosene, propane from across the border. And we import about $150 million worth of natural gas. All told, those products we understand are being taxed at a 10% rate. There's also the 25% rate on most other Canadian goods, everything from food stocks for livestock, feed for livestock, to sporting equipment, to furniture. And then there's the aluminum tariffs. We already talked about cans for the brewery industry, but also steel for the construction industry. In the midst of a housing crisis, when we are trying to build more homes, especially multifamily homes, many of which have steel infrastructure in them, this is a terrible time to be raising the price of construction equipment.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I feel like you've certainly answered the impact question, what this means for Vermonters. But I'm curious if there's anything else you want to add to that element before we pivot a little bit, just thinking short and long-term impacts of Vermonters throughout the state. Anything else to add there?
Well, I think the short-term impacts, unfortunately, here are going to be hard for Vermonters to avoid. These are broad-based import taxes. They are controlled by the White House, and we have very little influence over Donald Trump and what the White House chooses to do. That's in the short term. On this, in the midterm and the longer term, we should be pursuing energy independence here in Vermont. We're going to pay higher tariffs, higher taxes on imported energy because of Donald Trump. We should be developing and generating our own renewable energy here in Vermont and avoiding those higher prices. Unfortunately, Governor Scott and his administration, at almost every turn over the course of the last 8.5 years, have been working against deploying more solar and more wind power in Vermont. And unfortunately, Vermonters are going to pay for that poor decision making.
Right. Yeah, that has certainly been a hard pill to swallow. So thanks for the reminder there. But totally agree to your point about energy independence. That seems like really pivotal at this point in time. Okay, so you mentioned at the top that tariffs have been around for a while. We've seen things happen like this before, but for some reason, to me, this what's happening right now with Trump's tariffs feels very different from what we may have seen historically. Is that true, or am I crazy?
You're not crazy. I think there's two things that are very different about this trade war than other periods of high tariffs in American history. If you roll back over the 225 or 250-year history of our country, we have had periods of high tariffs before. Usually, those tariffs have been used to raise funds to cover a war effort. The War of 1812 or the Civil War were periods of very high tariffs. What is different about this is these are tariffs that are being implemented by one person. Historically, tariff rates have been set through legislation that the Congress has passed and approved by the president. Here, it's just the president by executive order implementing these tariffs and their broad reach. Now, the Congress, over the course of the last 50 years, has given the White House and the executive branch more authority to set tariff rates than it has in the past. However, the expectation was that authority would be used judiciously. What has happened instead is Congress has given the Trump administration an inch, and Donald Trump has taken a mile. So we are operating in a period where Donald Trump is acting like a king, and the Republicans in Congress are doing absolutely nothing to check his power. That's the first thing that is very different from the United States' experience with tariffs. The second, and what is so insidious about this new regime, is that these aren't tariffs designed to fund a war effort or protect a particular industry or help it grow. These are tariffs designed to raise revenue for the federal government in order to afford to give billionaires tax cuts. This is working class Americans paying to give Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and Jeff Bezos a tax cut. They are regressive taxes designed to help billionaires.
Okay, so I was right then in feeling that this was a little bit different from maybe what we've seen historically, actually a lot different. And while we're on the topic of an individual who acts like a king, I do want to share something that President Trump posted over the last few days. You may have seen it. He said, "The only thing that makes sense is for Canada to become our cherished 51st state. that would make all tariffs and everything else disappear. Now, to me, we're very close to the border. So this growing tension between the United States and Canada is causing me some concern. I don't know if you feel the same, but that's where I'm at right now. And I'm curious to hear from you. How do you anticipate this relationship between the United States and Canada to evolve in the coming months, assuming Trump will continue with this sort of inflammatory language?
Well, we know that at least half of the stuff that comes out of Donald Trump's mouth is either factually incorrect, an outright lie, or just total baloney, right? But sometimes we don't know which half.
Right.
What is different about this second Trump administration, Trump 2.0, than in the first is he doesn't have any guardrails around him anymore. He's fired all of the people who would check his power within the bureaucracy. He's fired all the people who would check his impulses within the military. He's has billionaires inside the White House deciding who to hire and who to fire. And he's upending every institution and alliance that the United States has had since the end of the Second World War. And those alliances and institutions, for whatever their problems, and there are many, though they have allowed the United States to prosper to an unprecedented degree since the end of World War II. He is upending all of that. And I'm afraid that even our closest allies in Canada, our biggest trading partners in Mexico, and our friends in places like Panama and Greenland, they need to take what Donald Trump says seriously. And my recommendation to our allies and friends in other countries is don't trust Donald Trump any farther than you could throw him.
Okay. Yeah, that seems like good advice. It's hard to take in, but important. You mentioned guardrails a little earlier, and that got me thinking about guardrails that we can install here in Vermont via state policy. I'm wondering if that's possible, if there is legislation that could come of this to help protect Vermonters. Is that an avenue where we might see some movement?
Well, both the governor and State Treasurer Mike Pichak have established their own working groups to evaluate the tariff regimes and make recommendations about what we could possibly do to protect Vermonters. Unfortunately, like I said, we don't have a lot of control over the tariff regime from the Trump White House, and our border is with Canada. We trade $2.8 billion worth of goods, or we purchase $2.8 billion worth of goods from them annually. I'm afraid that as the tariffs go into effect, not only will we pay more for our goods, but Canada is going to retaliate and raise the price of Vermont-made goods that would have been sold in Canada. We have already seen some companies reporting canceled Canadian orders. We've seen Canadian tourists canceling their vacations here in Vermont. We're going to have to deal with some of those short-term impacts. Again, in the medium and the longer term, we should be pursuing a policy of energy independence and building more renewable energy inside Vermont so that we can protect ourselves from this sort of disruption.
Right. Okay. I do like that there is some offering of hope there. I appreciate that. I have one more question for you. I'm a little afraid that you won't be able to offer the same hope, but I'm hoping that you can. So we'll see. I'm curious if there is literally anything that on an individual level we can do, or we can help Vermonters to do, to prepare ourselves for what to me feels like high-speed rail taking us right into a recession. Is there anything we could possibly do to address that?
Well, it certainly feels like we are headed into some really tough economic times, whether that's laid off federal employees or canceled federal contracts that might have provided solar for low-income Vermonters or paid for school meals. That's going to be really, really hard for Vermonters, and that sucks. That said, VPIRG's been around for 53 years now. We've been through this before. We survived the energy crises of the 1970s, the deregulation period of the 1980s, 8 years of peace and prosperity in the 1990s, but followed by 9/11, the dot-com bubble bursting, the Great Recession, and the first Trump administration and COVID. We have been through crises before as a state and as an organization, and we always come through them. And we come through them because we remain true to our values. And here at VPIRG, our mission is to support and protect Vermont's people, economy, and local environment. We stay true to that goal, whether times are great or times are tough. And that's our North Star. What's good for Vermont's people, what's good for Vermont's environment, what's good for Vermont's locally based economy. And then we give people opportunities to get engaged. One of the things that the Trump administration is very clear that they want to, what is their strategy is to make us feel overwhelmed, make us feel alone, make us feel despair, and we can't let them do that. And the antidote to despair is action. It is signing a petition, calling your state legislator and talking about a particular piece of legislation, sending an email to the governor. It's showing up at a community meeting or a forum. It's having a good conversation with a VPIRG canvasser when they come to the door in the summer. And it's through that action that we demonstrate people power. And when our country has been challenged in the past by billionaires, it is people power who out there defending government of the people, by the people, and for the people that ultimately is what saves us.
I love that. That feels like the perfect place to end. I don't think we're going to get much better than that. So I really appreciate those inspiring words, and I feel truly grateful to be writing out these turbulent times with all of you here. And I look forward to more updates from you and probably more messages of hope. I might be coming to your door and just asking for more pieces of inspiration. But I thank you so much for your time today, Tom, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. I'm sitting down with Dara Torre, Vermont State Representative of the Washington 2 House District. Currently, Representative Torre is serving as Clerk of House Committee on Energy and Digital Infrastructure, and aside from all of her work within the legislature, is also serving as U.S. Program Coordinator with the Regulatory Assistance Project and Energy Coordinator with the town of Moortown. So Representative Torre, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Vermont's Voice.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, we're so happy to have you. I know it's an incredibly busy week, which is partly why you're here, but do just want to note that and note that we're so grateful that you did take the time out of your very busy schedule to be here. So I think we should probably just jump right into it. I think we have a lot to talk about for this conversation. First, what I want to start with is the fact that it's crossover week at the State House. And so you know this better than anybody, but it's a hugely important milestone for the legislative session. Now, when I started my job at VPIRG 3 years ago, I had no idea what crossover was, and it took me some getting used to understand the legislative schedule and just all that it entails. I have a feeling that there might be some listening in who also are a little unclear as to what crossover is, so I'm wondering if we could just start there. If you could tell us what crossover is and why it's significant.
It's a very important time. We've known about it for a while. We knew the date, so we've been working for it. And basically, all of the committees, all the policy committees have to have their bills that they want to actually move out of committee by this Friday. So that's March 14th.
Okay.
So we actually passed a bill out of committee today.
Oh, amazing.
As the clerk, I get to do vote.
Very cool.
So, and we have only gotten 2 out
Okay.
this whole session so far. So that's like so exciting. And then neither of our bills have any money in them, but if they did, the money committees would then have a week to work on them.
Okay.
So they have until the 21st. So that's the Ways and Means Committee and the Appropriations Committee.
Okay.
So that's pretty much how it works. There is one bill that will move independently of this crossover deadline, and that's the education bill. So it's kind of got a special leeway. So
is it fair to say that crossover is like the halfway mark in the session?
yes.
Roughly.
And sort of the do or die point for this year.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that a bill that doesn't make it to crossover is gone. It could get active and move in the following year. So because this is year 1, there's a little less pressure. Like crossover at year 2,
It's a big deal.
is a really big deal.
Because if a bill doesn't make it over, then it essentially dies there, right? Because there's not enough time to push it out.
Right.
Okay. Gotcha. So that's useful information. I think really helpful context for folks.
Oh, can I add one thing? Because I
Please.
watched it and I just loved it. There's this new video series on Instagram, Jill Krowinski,
Oh,
our
cool.
speaker,
Yeah.
and Molly Moore and Connor put together these different topics. So really quick and fun. And they just did one on crossover.
So we should tune in.
Tune in.
Okay. We'll clock that. We'll put it in the description link below. That's
Okay.
helpful. Okay, so since we are more or less halfway through the session at this point, I'm curious if you have any challenges and successes that you might like to share from this first half, maybe those bills that passed through your committee or anything else, bill related or not, that you'd like to share.
Yeah, it's a good question. So really one of the challenges for me, and I think beyond me, has been the pace. We've gotten off to a slow start. And I only have one session behind me, and it was a very dynamic one.
Gotcha.
And I was on a committee that was just gushing. So that was the Environment and Energy Committee last year, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
Some heavy lifting happened.
Yeah.
So this year, our challenge has been just all the level setting, all the learning. The pace is really different. And of course, we are narrowing our focus a lot. Even though I'm not on an education-related committee, we're all doing so much on that topic. So it's felt different.
Gotcha.
So it's a challenge and an opportunity because we're also kind of coalescing as a new committee. And this committee is new in the sense that it's digital infrastructure, I didn't realize, has been sort of an orphan child. It hasn't really had a committee. So, in a while, I guess. So one of the bills that we passed is actually an oversight bill to kind of see how can we make our big info tech IT projects be more transparent to the public.
Love that.
More timely and on budget. And, how does the legislature play a role in oversight a little better and really support the Agency of Digital Services? So that bill, getting that bill developed and passed was a real milestone.
Yeah, that feels huge.
Yeah, we all learned a lot because you're learning about every agency in state government because everybody needs digital infrastructure.
Absolutely.
And it's like so important for our public. It's how they access services from the state. And we want our services to be delivered well. So I've been really enjoying that part because it's new for me, having come from environment and energy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, you still got half a session to go and then next session. And
Yeah.
it's good stuff coming down the pike. I'm excited to hear that. Well, as I mentioned in the bio, you are serving as clerk, right,
Yes.
for the House Energy and Digital Infrastructure. And so I took a look to see what you were all up to. And it's a lot, as far as I can tell. This was a few days ago, so the numbers may have changed, but I noticed that there were 27 active bills moving through your committee. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
That's a lot. No? So
Yeah.
I'm not going to run through every single one of those bills. That would take too long. But I am curious if there are any in particular that you're feeling extra excited about or alternatively less excited about.
Yeah, I'll start with the less exciting.
Okay,
just
yeah.
because there are quite a few repeal bills. So, and I'm not really familiar with seeing that so much. Like, that's really a thing.
It's new for me too.
Yeah, it's a thing this session. So there's a number of them, and we had the bill sponsor do an introduction. So we listened to all of those bills. We also got a number of other bills that were introduced by people who aren't on our committee, but have all sorts of good energy ideas. And so that was really interesting. And the one bill that we just passed this morning that's energy related is it was a bill from Rep. Sibilia. And it's really looking at some of the gaps, the data gaps that we have in terms of understanding where we are in the energy transition, with a real focus on, what parts of the state are moving at a different rate, are experiencing more burdens, more barriers to, access to clean energy and electrification of transportation. So that we worked quite a bit on that bill.
Okay, great.
Learning from a lot of like the Agency of Natural Resources, a lot of the different data that does exist already. So, again, that was a real learning experience for the committee to just kind of find out all the different actors that are involved beyond the Climate Action Office, in this big effort that climate action is.
Yeah.
It's a big, heavy government lift.
It's a lot to keep up with. I don't know how any legislator does it. It's hard for me to just, even reading up on it, just keep up to date on all of the moving pieces of it. So
it's true.
Really commend you for that. So just to lay on the bad news for a little bit longer, I did want to touch on H289 because I know there was some testimony on that today. And
yes,
I think really what I want to talk about is the response that you're getting. And just for some clarity, H289 is being referred to as the governor's climate omnibus bill. I think for certain organizations, including ours, it feels more like a climate rollback bill, but it depends on who you ask. And so what I would like to know, what are the conversations surrounding this bill with your colleagues, with constituents? Are people reaching out about this bill in particular? I know it's been hotly debated, so I'm just curious what kind of feedback you're getting.
Yeah, I'm hearing from folks.
Okay.
I think I got like 3 phone calls already, messages.
Really? Okay.
From folks that are concerned about it. And, a couple of people have reached out more about some of the apps, the repeal bills that this is better than that. It's,
Yeah.
But there's still some pieces that some other people are concerned in my district about because it's being framed as affordability.
Right.
And that somehow our existing climate policies are not affordable. So that's the part that is really what we'll have to dig into with that bill.
Absolutely.
So we didn't take, what we did today was walk through it. And we didn't get very far with our wonderful legislative council. So, but what we'll do in next week will be, really taking testimony and digging into it. And it's going to be another good opportunity for this new committee to learn our major pieces of climate policy.
Right.
Because they're all in.
Yeah, absolutely. And to the point on affordability, that is totally valid and fair and makes sense. I understand that is a growing concern among many Vermonters. And I do think in the same breath, there is a lot of misinformation about what that looks like in relation to climate action. So I think, at least for me, I'm eager to hear what digging into that bill more within your committee looks like, what is found, and what useful, realistic information we can share.
Yes, there'll be a lot of great information coming out. So keep an eye on that.
Great. Definitely will.
Yeah.
Well, in a very busy week, we've also had a very busy day today, specifically because we had lots of youth in the building, which was great. Today was the Vermont Youth Lobby Day of Action, and I know you played a pretty significant role in this, at least spending time with some of those youth. So I'm eager to get your thoughts on how the day went. But first, I do want to take this moment to share a quick clip from the day's events. So we can roll that now.
Keep your carbon in the soil. Keep your carbon in the soil.
So Representative Torre, could you tell us a little bit about the day?
Yes, it was. It was a huge turnout. So we looked out our committee room looks out on the green, and we could see just all these people.
Wow.
Just coming in a huge line. And then fortunately our testimony ended and we were able, several lawmakers were able to go and meet with the students in the pavilion.
Very good.
That was wonderful because we got a chance to introduce ourselves and to take questions and, really thoughtful questions. And then we had, 6 or so students came to my committee at the end of the day.
Very cool.
And that was some testimony, like really articulate, heartfelt, persuasive testimony.
So
It saddens and angers me to see Senate and House Republicans moving to change our existing policies in favor of quick fixes and vague future plans that will ultimately leave our state in debt in more ways than one. If action is taken to remove the existing climate legislation, the impact may not be felt today, tomorrow, or next year. Ultimately, it is not the current legislators and leaders who will feel the impact. It is their grandchildren. As an inheritor of this beautiful state, I cannot stand by and allow choices to be made that will further worsen the already catastrophic damage we have caused to our planet. It is necessary that we take into account the future of our state and not just our current pocketbooks. The climate crisis is not something we can put a Band-Aid on or shove aside to prioritize other issues. It must be at the forefront of our decision-making now and going forward. To my state government, I ask that you look around today and understand that these are the people who will be left with the consequences of your actions. It is up to us to make choices that will rectify the damage done by today's legislators. I hope that today's display of unity and action can demonstrate to those in power that the youth of Vermont demand a say in climate action, and we will not settle for plans that put off real action, and we are not fooled by empty promises for change. Thank you all.
We are in this building and in our state being pressured by the fossil fuel industry. They are funding work here, and there's a lot of fear in this building. And it's been my experience that youth give legislators courage. We need you here more often. We need your friends here with you. What you're doing is important.
I just want to say how proud I am of all of you for showing up. And you've been so inspirational the whole time I've been in this building. So I was in that Environment and Energy Committee last session, which was a very dynamic session where a lot of work that had taken a long time to come to fruition kind of happened. And we dealt with some really controversial legislation. And I found that the youth that visited and supported us during that time were really foundational, like really helped.
I just want to echo what the civilian said, Laura and Graham, and just tell you how impressed I am. Make me very proud. Next generation.
So they moved you.
They moved us, and we needed to hear it now. And that was one of the major moments for me to be able just to express myself, how much I appreciate their involvement this session and last session as we do this heavy lifting.
Right.
These bills that are, controversial, having their voices and just always bringing it back to what's on the line here.
Exactly.
So I think I could just tell that they had an impact on everybody around the table.
Well, that's really special. And I just want to thank you for playing a role in that, because I imagine as a younger person, it can feel intimidating to go into the state house and to give testimony and to meet all these legislators. I imagine there's some degree of overwhelm that comes with that. So having people like you who are very open to the process and very communicative and supportive of the youth, I think it makes a big difference to them.
I hope so. Yeah, because I was impressed. They were just, like I said, articulate and honest.
I love it. Well, I'm excited to see more, watch some of the videos back, and I think it was a great day overall. So again, thanks for being a part of it.
They're going to come back.
Oh yeah, they're in the State House pretty often, it seems like, especially this session, which
This is a really important time to show
right.
up.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
Please show up.
More importantly,
Please write and call and show up.
Yeah, definitely. It's open to the public,
Absolutely.
That's the beautiful part of the State House.
It's people's house.
Exactly. Well, as we talked about a little bit, it feels like, at least to me, the session is just flying by. Before we know it, it's going to be legislative break. Summer's coming. Maybe not too soon, but it's on the horizon. But I imagine you probably will still be keeping pretty busy because, as we know, you are working with the Regulatory Assistance Project and the town of Moortown. I'm curious what that work is like for you. What does that entail? Is that what you'll be doing once the session ends?
Yes. So my day job is with the Regulatory Assistance Project, or RAP, that's based here in Montpelier. And I will go back to full-time as soon as we get released.
Gotcha.
And that is a great place to work as a legislator, because we work on clean energy policy. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of, we're a global organization. So, I'm always getting exposed to a lot of new ideas.
That seems perfect.
Things that are working in this state and ideas that are coming from over here. And so that's a great, I just have a lot of access.
Very cool.
Inspiration, which is really important, and tools. So there's that. My personal role in the organization isn't really crafting that stuff. It's more supporting my team.
Okay.
So that's, I think, why it works for me to be able to pretty much disappear for a while. But it's been really important for me to understand all that goes into working in the public interest. And that's one of the things I love about VPIRG, because that's what you're all about.
Oh, for sure.
And that's the work of the lawmaker. And right now, with the federal picture, we're seeing, a loss of the public interest in a very frightening way.
Yeah, I certainly agree with you on that.
Yeah.
But what I do love is that the work you're doing outside of the legislature still feels very aligned and related to. So it's like, this is your work and your passion, and it's kind of your life, right?
It is. And I started there in 2016.
Oh, wow.
In July. And then November 2016 happened. So I got to go through a whole Trump administration and kind of see that a lot of states kept working and making progress, including Vermont. This feels different.
It does. I keep hearing that.
It feels different. But I'm still really hopeful that, we're going to hold the line here and continue to make progress. And, innovation can't really be stopped.
Right. Well, thanks for that little piece of hope. Whenever I do this, I'm always sort of grasping at those hopeful moments and pieces. So I always like to call it out when I'm hearing them and really absorb them.
Yeah.
But that feels good to hear. So thanks. I'm sure you're going to agree with me on this, but I think you represent a pretty special contingent of Washington County.
Yes.
And so by that, I mean Duxbury, Fayston, Moortown, Waitsfield, and Warren.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if you would be interested in playing a quick round of District Delights where I share some prompts with you.
Sure.
And basically, you'll get to promote some of your local favorites. That sounds good?
Happy to do that.
All right, cool. Well, then let's learn more about Representative Torre's District Delights. Representative Torre, best place to grab a bite to eat?
That is a tough one because we have good food.
You can list a few if that feels
Yeah.
better.
I mean, I'm going to say, I think a lot of people probably have heard of Canteen, which is our amazing creamy stand, and they just got an award. or they're in the running for a very prestigious food salon. Very creative, savory food as well as the amazing creamies. So a lot of people know that, and that's not necessarily a quick bite, depending on what day you go. But we have Mad Taco.
Oh, yeah, a
That's
classic.
my son's favorite.
Okay. Good stuff there.
For me, like when I go out, like I kind of like to go to the Hideaway, which is on Route 17. It feels like going back in time. It's just got a real cozy feel, a nice, solid menu, and a wonderful bar. And so I'd like to go there. Oh, there's a lot others as well. And one is that has closed recently, which is really hard for me, is the Big Picture, which was our fair community space, movie theater, amazing.
Movie theater and restaurant. And they had great donuts. Yes, the donuts.
There is good news on the donut.
Do tell.
So Virginia, who makes the donuts, she has relocated over across the street, down the street a little ways. There's a new bagel shop called BB Bagels. And Virginia's got her donuts, Sugar Mill donuts, also for sale. So that's a win.
Okay.
And that's a quick bite.
That is a quick bite.
But there are a lot of donuts in the valley.
And they're creative types of donuts.
Twisted Halo. We have Mad River Donuts, also with some bagels thrown in. So there's, and I did, when I campaigned, I did Dara with Donuts with Dara event.
Cute.
So I could hop around to the different.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like so much fun.
Yeah, it's hard to choose.
Very filling. Yeah.
Yeah, not healthy necessarily, but
really tasty.
Very good.
All right. Well, we've definitely got some good suggestions there. And I'm a Washington County girl, so I'm going to be hitting these places up.
You want to come over.
I do want to come over. Okay. Best place for a morning latte.
So we have a number of cafes, but I'm going to highlight a new one. It's called Chaos Coffee.
Okay.
And it's actually a tiny home in a parking lot at the intersection of 117.
Okay.
And what's wonderful about it is the owner, Karen, she really has curated how she gets her coffee. She's all into sustainability. She's just a very thoughtful business owner and makes really good drink, just whatever you want. And so that's a great place to go if you're on the go, and you're heading to the mountain or something like that. You can just stop in there. And then if you want more of the sit-down experience, we had Three Mountain Cafe, which is under new ownership, younger. The BB's Bagels that I mentioned and Three Mountain Cafe are both younger, new business owners. It's kind of fun.
Got to support.
To see that next generation stepping up and making good things. And so cafes are pretty covered. I wish we had more in like my town. We have a general store, but they do.
Okay. Well, is it good coffee?
It's decent. Okay. And sometimes it's free. Just randomly it will be free.
That's an interesting.
You bring your mug.
Interesting business model, but I like it as a patron. That's cool. I can't wait to watch this back and just write down all of the places that I need to go this spring.
Just let me know if you have any questions.
It sounds great. All right. Where would you go to cuddle up with a good book?
Well, we have 2 bookstores. We have Tempest, been there for a long time. All sorts of great stuff. Rick is really friendly. Not really a place you can sit, though, with the book.
Okay.
Inklings is this new children's bookstore, an activity place where you actually could, if you like children's books, hang out in there.
Maybe if you have a child.
Yeah. Or if you're looking for a book for a child.
Right.
Place to go. But, there's this the libraries. Each town has a library, and not Duxbury and Payson, but the other towns do. And they're great spaces.
Cool. All right. Thanks for that.
Mm-hmm.
Where would you go to pick up some local produce?
Well, because I'm thinking spring and summer already. Hartshorn's Farm Stand is really great. And I also like to go to a CSA, Muddy Boots. It's really good. And then, of course, we have Huron's as our local grocery store, and they do stock a lot of local produce.
Oh, great. Okay.
And they also have an amazing deli.
Good to know.
While you're there.
Perfect. All right. Best place to enjoy the outdoors or spend time with friends?
I'm going to say Blueberry Lake because like I was telling you earlier, I love to swim.
Yes.
So, and then in the winter, there's Blueberry Lake, the cross-country trails, which are really nice. And then there's even mountain bike trails near there. And then across from where the coffee place is at 117, that intersection, there's some amazing mountain bike trails.
Oh, cool.
And so we have our Chamber of Commerce. It's sort of our welcome center right down there. And now you go behind it, and there's this bridge that takes you right over a brook with your bike. So you can access all those trails.
Sounds beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Definitely going to make a note of the swimming spaces. I'm not a strong swimmer, probably not as good as you, but I do like to be in the water.
That's a great place to swim. And of course, the river.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's a given.
Yeah.
Great. Are there any honorable mentions, things that I may have missed in my questions that you want to cover?
Well, our mountains for skiing are pretty fantastic. And I did want to mention something that's happening at Sugarbush that I just saw on Front Porch Forum that I thought I'd mention. I think they call it, I have never done it, but it's called Climb for Climate. It's a skin and sip event. Because I'm thinking there might be some young people listening to this who like to get out there. So it's the Friends of the Mad River, which is our watershed stewardship group, has organized these. And so it's basically, you get to skin up, and then they come down and meet for a drink and talk about recreation, how to be good stewards, how is climate impacting recreation. So that's something to watch.
Yeah, thank you for teeing that up.
And they also have Pride Weekend coming up.
Oh, cool. Okay. Well, it's interesting to me that you brought up Sugarbush Resort, which of course we know is in your district.
Mm-hmm.
And also, as you know, has seen a lot of action in recent days with the arrival of Vice President J.D. Vance and lots of Vermont protesters. Now, I don't know if you had any involvement with that, but I imagine with that being in your district, you at least heard about it or saw some of the commotion.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious from your perspective what that whole experience was like.
It was powerful.
Yeah.
And really went smoothly. I don't think there was any ugliness or violence or anything. It was a peaceful, wonderful opportunity coming right on the heels of the Zelensky-Trump Vance visit.
Yes.
That Friday.
Yes.
It allowed people to just come together and gather, processing that and saying, what's on their mind about what's going on. And the signs. And then just all of the media.
Tons of coverage.
People were talking about Vermont all over the world.
I know. How cool is that? That doesn't happen every day.
And it was really fun because the protest itself in the morning on that Saturday was organized by our local Indivisible group, Indivisible Mad River Valley, which is a wonderful group of they formed actually in 2017, I think, or 2016, right, when Trump was elected the first time. How do you become active? How do you come together and feel productive? And so here we are again. And they just did an amazing job.
It's great to hear.
It's so fun for me to see them being picked up and quoted. I'm like, yeah, Judy.
That feels like a huge deal.
Yeah, it was great. And then my neighbor, I saw she was skiing at Sugarbush wearing, a protest outfit. And she got quoted in the Boston Globe.
Wow.
I was like, what? So all kinds of stuff.
Overall, a pretty good day.
Yeah, really good day.
Amazing.
And I don't feel like it left the community feeling divided. I think it was handled really well.
Good. That's good to hear. I know a lot of folks typically might have that kind of concern of what happens if this breaks out into some nasty, violent thing, but that doesn't seem to be what Vermonters.
Porch Forum was hopping.
Was it?
Yeah.
It's always hopping on Front Porch Forum, though.
But I think in the end, everybody felt pretty proud of Vermont.
Good. Yeah, me too. I love it here.
Mm.
So I like what you touched on with the Indivisible group.
Yes.
And these sort of calls to action opportunities to sort of feel empowered. And
Yes.
that feels really important to me. And I'm sure it does for a lot of our listeners who might be feeling more mobilized or more willing to mobilize with just all the current events, the turbulence, whatnot. So I'm wondering if you have any advice, ideas. You already shared an opportunity, which I think is great. This ad coming up at Sugar Bush. We're definitely going to promote that. But do you have any other words of encouragement for folks who might want to get more involved?
Well, I mean, you can find your local Indivisible. I know that there's new ones forming now.
Oh, cool.
And it's great because you can go and visit another one and kind of learn, how did you guys, get started? But yeah, I missed it. I was on vacation, but they did the 50-50 one, which is like, I think that was the International Women's Day event that just happened. So there'll probably be more of those.
Okay.
And that's just, you can just put that in, Google that, 50-50 one.
We'll share that link as well.
Yeah, and then, I would encourage people to follow the Vermont Climate Caucus.
Of course.
Website.
Which you are a member of.
I am a member of. And I also encourage people to call the governor. Just what's on your mind? What are you worried about? Speak up.
He needs to hear from us, right?
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Well, Representative, this has been such a robust conversation. I've had a lot of fun with you. Is there anything else that you want to cover today that maybe we haven't touched on, or is there any one or two takeaways that you want to make sure our listeners really go home with?
Yeah, it's just this idea that we are, this is a big, challenging moment for climate forward individuals and for our state, because we do have a lot of real risks that we're facing now and headwinds. But at the same time, I feel like there are still so many tools that we haven't tapped into yet that I don't feel like we're going to need to scale back our goals. I really don't. I think that there's opportunity out there and that we can live within our carbon budget. Like, that's what we're being asked to do as Vermonters, right? Mm-hmm. As a legislator, we're asked all the time, stay within your budget, figure it out. That's what we're saying on the carbon front. We can do it. We can figure it out.
Great. Well, Representative Torre, thank you again so much for being here during crossover week, no less.
Thank you for helping me and energizing me through crossover week.
Yeah, it's been great. I'm excited to see what comes of it, and of course, the remainder of the session as well. And I'll see you at the next Climate Solutions Caucus meeting.
Super. Thank you for all you do supporting that.
Thank you. Take care.
All right.
And that's our episode. Big thanks to Representative Dara Torre and Tom Hughes for chatting with us today. As always, if you'd like to learn more about our work, you can visit VPIRG.org, get on our mailing lists, and follow us on social media. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and rate us 5 stars. As always, if you have questions, ideas, stories that you'd like to share with us, you can do so by reaching out to me at jheiden@vpirg.org. That's JHEIDEN@VPIRG.org. And as always, I'd like to give a big thank you to my co-producer, Elijah Cushion. And I am Jordan Heiden, and you've been listening to Vermont's Voice. Take care and talk soon.